So we're looking at place value, specifically place value involving decimal numbers. And we'll be looking at face value, the place value, total value, and periods to help us understand how place value actually works when we're dealing with decimal numbers. So let's begin. So why don't we just start with a number and see if we can figure out what it's all about. So let's type a number down. Doesn't really matter what it is. Let's say 7, 6, decimal point, 3, 0, 2. There you go, something as simple as that. Now, what does this all actually mean? Well, I think if you've watched my previous videos on place value with whole numbers, you'll remember that this digit here is in the place value of the units, or the ones. And if I think about how I get that 6, well, it's in the face value of the 6 is 6. The place value is 1, and so its total value is 6. So that's what this digit means. Why do we have a look at this digit here, the 7? So that's in the tens. Okay, that's in the tens place value. And what that means is that the face value is 7. The place value is 10, and so its total value is 70. So that's what that 7 means. It means 70. Now we have the decimal point right here. And this basically separates your whole numbers from numbers which are all smaller than 1. So these are our decimal numbers, our decimal digits. This first place value we would call this the tenths, and you can write with a little t. Okay, and we write that like this. You can write it like this, so tenths, right? And what does that mean? You can also write it as in 1 divided by 10, which is 0.1. And what value does the 3 hold? Well, its face value is 3, right? Its place value is 0.1. And in total, if you multiply those two, you get 0.3. Okay, let's take a look at this digit. That's in the hundreds. Okay, hundredths. I'll write that down. Hundredths. Oh, let's go back a bit. Sorry, guys. Hundredths. And this is the tenths. Right? So hundredths, so this looks like this as a fraction. Okay. As a decimal, 1 divided by 100 is 0.01. And what does the 0 mean? Well, it's worth 0. I think you can probably anticipate that. The face value is 0. The place value is 0.01. And its value is, well, anything multiplied by 0 is 0. And the last one there is the 2, and its place value is the thousandths. Okay, so we can give it this notation as a fraction. So thousandths. 1 divided by 1,000 is this, and its face value is a 2. Its place value, is 0.001. And that means its total value is 0.002. Okay. Let's look at this a slightly different way and bring in the idea of the different periods that are associated with place value. Now, you might recall some ideas dealing with place value where you have a little diagram that looks like this, or another diagram that's similar, where you might have it in columns and then you break it up and then you assign different place values to those columns. And the idea there is to basically use these diagrams to help us understand place value a little bit better. So for example, we could put in here hundreds, for example, tens, and ones or units, okay? And this is our ones or units period. So this is the period. Okay, and then you have the idea of the next period over here, which becomes thousands. This is our thousands period over here. Okay, and this over here would be our millions period. Okay, so there are 3 periods right there. And we would just repeat the hundreds, tens, and ones in each of these periods. So we have the ones here. Let me just actually change that a little bit. We got our ones, we got our tens, we got our hundreds, we got our ones, we got our tens, and we got our hundreds. And because they're in different periods, we would call them the ones of thousands, tens of thousands, and the hundreds of thousands. With one exception, we don't really say ones of thousands, we just call them thousands. And then tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. Ones of millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. Again, we don't say ones of millions. So, what happens when we're dealing with numbers that are lower than the ones of ones? Well, we put in a decimal point. So mostly when people show you these kinds of diagrams, they put in a decimal point right here. Now that can be a good thing, but I think it helps confuse what happens in this period right here, because this first period after the decimal point is a bit of an exception to the general rule that the periods are made up of hundreds, tens, and ones. Okay, so let me just change this diagram a little bit and show you what I mean. So here we go with a diagram which is similar to the previous one, slightly different as you'll notice, because I'm starting on the left here with the ones period, and we've got the ones of ones, the ones of tens, and the ones of hundreds. And of course we don't usually just say the ones of hundreds or the ones of tens or the ones of ones, we just say the hundreds, tens, and ones. Now, what is lower, what goes after when you get to 1, or the ones place value, what comes next? What's smaller than that? Well, then we get into our decimals. So like I said before, when we were dealing with 76.302, from here on, we're dealing with decimals. The only interesting thing really, I suppose, is what happens when I'm going to put this in a diagram, because a lot of diagrams that you'll see kind of are a little bit confusing about where this decimal point goes. So the decimal point either gets put here, so there, or, well, actually, that's the only place it ever gets put in diagrams like this. And that makes it a little bit weird, because then, in a way, this structure of hundreds, tens, and ones doesn't quite work, because it gets reversed this way anyway. So it should be like the ones, the tenths, the hundredths, ones, tenths, hundredths, like that. It should be like that, but it isn't. This here, the tenths, they look like this, right? This is the tenths. This is the hundredths. Okay, but there's none of these. There's none of that. There's no multiple of 10 that can go here to make sense, because 1 over 1 is 1. It's not 0.1. So this is a weird one. It breaks the structure. So what you can do is, if you want, you can decide, you know what, that decimal point, it makes more sense if it's taking the place of this ones unit here. And so that becomes a decimal point. And then we have our tenths, hundredths, so this here, I don't know, is this the ones? I don't know. You can call it the oneths if you like. This for sure is the thousandths. And beyond that be the millionths, etc. And so this becomes the 1 of thousandths. This becomes here the 1 of 10 thousandths. And this here becomes the 1 of 100 thousandths. Okay, so that's how these work. So when I plug in our number again that we started with, 76.302, probably start with the point and then go 302, so 0.302. 302, and that way I put things in the right place. And then start from the point and go backwards, 6, 7, right? So again, yeah, we've got 70, because 7 times 10, 70, 6 times 1, 6. Here we've got 3/10, we've got 0 over 100, we've got 2 over 1,000. You could look at it like that if you were breaking down the whole number and expanding it. Another way of expanding 76.302 is to use decimals. So you'd go something like this. You've got 70 plus 6 plus 3 divided by 10 is 0.3 plus, well, no point including 0. You can say plus 0, but I tend to just ignore that bit. If there's 0 there in the middle of a number, just, you don't need to include it in your expanded form. And then 2 divided by 1,000, well, that's 0.002. 002. And you can just check, you should have 3 digits because there are 3 zeros, 1, 2, 3 after the decimal point. You should have 1 digit after the decimal point for this one because there's 1 0, and you do get that here. So that is a way to expand them. So that's kind of a brief introduction to place value. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing. I know it is a little bit confusing, but hopefully that has helped a bit. My advice would be to go back over the video and just watch certain portions again. Thank you very much.